At this point, it seems that the Mueller report findings will not be part of the articles of impeachment. It'll at this point, the preliminary reporting is indicating these two articles of impeachment. Your reaction to that?
Well, I find it a little bit surprising and actually a little bit disappointing. On the one hand, it's understandable in the sense that a certain number of Democrats were always uncomfortable with the Mueller allegations as a basis for impeachment. And so it's possible that the Democrats simply don't have the votes on the floor to pass an article of impeachment based on the obstruction of justice allegations in Volume 2 of the Mueller report. That said, I do think it's a very odd thing to leave out. If you're going to impeach Donald Trump for abuse of power and for obstruction of Congress, it seems kind of conspicuous to leave out the kind of flamboyant obstructions of justice that Mueller describes. And I do think that runs two risks. First of all, while a criminal offense is by no means necessary for an impeachable act, I do think it's odd to leave out the most flamboyantly criminal behavior and the most clearly criminal behavior that the president has engaged in. I also think it runs some risk of suggesting that Congress kind of doesn't mind if presidents obstruct criminal investigations. So I think it's an odd thing to do, and I think it's probably not wise on the part of Democrats, at least not to have a vote on it and let people, let their members decline if they want to support the article, but not advancing it at all seems strange to me.
Norm, your reaction to this, including the question of does the House have to worry, do the Democrats have to worry about what precedents they will set by not bringing certain articles of impeachment?
I'm less worried than Ben is. I think there are some compelling reasons as to why Speaker Pelosi and the Democrats in Congress are taking this route. And we don't know for sure whether the abuse of power and obstruction charges will leave out entirely what was in the Mueller report. But the first point is the critical one. To make this work, knowing that you're not going to get Republicans because they have decided to ignore the evidence and stick together in opposition, you need to have nearly all of your Democrats. They'll probably lose one or two, but keeping those Democrats from red districts who signed on after we learned about the Ukrainian situation was a critical element to this. You have to set that marker. The second is you want to keep this focused on things that make it easy for a public to understand and to understand where you're going. That means you streamline the debate. You focus on things where you have this clear-cut evidence. So I agree with Ben that what was in the Mueller report, where he basically said his hands were tied by the OLC ruling, the Office of Legal Counsel ruling, that you could not bring criminal charges against a sitting president. But he made it crystal clear that it was up to Congress through impeachment to carry this forward. But right now, the focus has to be on making something happen that gets Democrats down and that the public accepts, at least a large share of the public, other than the diehards who are with Trump no matter what.
Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.